Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee and Football, presented by Rick Vavro and Austin Underground. I'm your host, Blake Monroe, where I'm joined each and every day by Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton, who are both on the road today. I'm the only one at home for once, so that's awesome. But tell us where you're checking in from, what you're drinking, get your questions in. And first, guys, Texas fans should have yet another reason to be happy as they haul in a commitment yesterday. Jerry, tell us about it.
Yeah, Grayson Littleton from Wiregrass Ranch and Wesley Chapel, northeast of Tampa, one of those growing areas in Tampa. Corner, nickel, everybody's told him corner or nickel. Went and watched him, saw him a couple of Mondays ago, right after Texas offered him. After his visit, we put out on Texas football. We were 65, 70% that he'd end up at Texas. He did that. When he decommitted from Clemson the same day, Texas offered him, Michigan was the favorite, and he went to Michigan for an official visit 2 weekends ago. Then he went to Texas last weekend. But there were some things working in Texas' favor on this, even though Michigan had been recruiting him longer. One, instability in their program, right? Two, he had been to Austin before. He'd been on campus before and really liked it. His family's originally from Kansas. He moved to Florida, I think, before his freshman year. His stepbrother actually went to Clemson, where he was once committed. But look, he plays for California Power. That's a 7-on-7 program that Myron Charles and Javion Hilson, they're all a part of. A lot of kids in Southwest Florida are part of that as well. So there's a connection there within that for Texas. He's also represented NIL by Rosenhaus Sports, Bobby, which same representation of Jamie French. So for those freaking out about Jamie French, just remember that. Because you shouldn't be over Florida. And we'll get to some of that in a second. But at Littleton, you know, what's interesting, Bobby, look, Clemson's done a really good job evaluating corners under Dabo. If they take a corner, that's saying something. Then Penn State done a really good job in defensive evaluation. Michigan done a really good job in defensive evaluation. So those are your four schools where ultimately he picked Clemson over Penn State originally, picked Texas over Michigan this go round. That is four really good defensive schools that have produced defensive backs and evaluated really well on the defensive side of the ball. He would be a 10 if he's a December graduate. He'll be in Austin in January. If he was to run track his senior year, I think he'd probably run 10.75, 10.8. But kids don't really train for track unless you're an elite track guy. It's not like Texas. They don't really train for track. These are upside kids in the state of Florida. And my last thing before Bobby talks about what he likes about this, I just posted an article on OnTexasFootball.com. Steve Sarkisian's out-of-state commitments, signees, and commitments, out-of-state prospects. Florida now has the most with 9. And they could add to that because Javion Hilson's still on the board. And the more Texas recruits in Florida, the more they'll win in Florida, in my opinion.
I tell you what, the same I actually wrote about something similar, Jerry, this morning, and that Littleton becomes the third Longhorn commit in this class from the state of Florida. They still have a chance to go to 4. They've already got 2 in Georgia. They're trying to go to at least 3 in Georgia this year.
I got 3.
They had 3. Emory was
Dallas Hicks because Hicks
because he moved forward. So
yep.
my point being is those 2 states. It's clear when Steve Sarkisian came to Texas, you and I got together and we said, okay, where is he going to recruit? We immediately said California.
Yeah,
that's where he's from. He's got from his time at USC. He's out from out west. His time at Washington. He's definitely going to hit California hard. Well, here we are. Fast forward 4 years later, and he's actually in Georgia and Florida. And so that's what you know. Look, you go where the talent is. That's number one. And it doesn't matter where you're from. You got to go where the talent's from. You're not Kalen DeBoer and recruiting South Dakota right now. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Okay. So that you go where the talent is. But furthermore, Texas is resonating more in the Deep South, I think, because of the tie to the SEC.
Yeah, no doubt.
And so that's nothing wrong with that, in my opinion, at all. So I feel like that is one of the places that Texas will continue to try to do well in, particularly in Georgia and Florida. And why not? I do have a question for you, Jerry. You keep mentioning California Power, okay, that the 7-on-7 team. How is California Power anywhere near South Florida.
They've taken a conglomeration. They've combined some 7-on-7s into one bigger program, essentially, is what's going on there, especially in the Tampa area. But I wanted to mention this. I think one of the hidden things that also the move to the SEC, but also helps Texas in a Florida and maybe in Georgia in future classes, although, you're still Kirby Smart's still going to win the majority of the battles he thinks he has to have. Let's just get that out of the way. A.D. Mitchell transfers from Georgia, and it has a great year. Isaiah Bond transfers from Alabama, and is having a tremendous year. Those things matter too. Also, Cedric Baxter came from Florida as a 5-star and started his freshman year. I mean, here's the crazy thing. If you count Dia Bell, it's committed, which I did on this On Texas Football list. Texas has 3 5-stars from Florida that were ranked as 5-stars by any service, anywhere. That is Cedric Baxter, Jamie French, and Dia Bell. Javion Hilson is a top 40 guy if they end up beating A&M for a kid in Cocoa, Florida. Myron Charles, after seeing him, he's underrated. If he ain't a top 100 guy in the country, I'd give up. I'll retire. So, I mean, like, they're winning big battles in Florida. So, Florida 9, California 8, then Louisiana. Those are the 3 states where Texas has signed or committed the most out-of-state prospects. So, the huge pickup, I think it was a huge pickup for Texas here because corner was a need in the class. I think Caleb Chester is extremely high football IQ player. I think he's going to play punch above his recruiting ranking in college, just off of football intelligence. He's got it. And Grayson Littleton, a lot of upside with him. He's fast, he's quick. He's probably more sudden and quick than 100-meter fast, but he's still running 4.48 and 4.51 on a laser as a 16, 17-year-old kid. So with what Texas is doing in player development, I think they've, you add Zels Hicks, you add Jonah Williams, and they have 4 solid defensive backs in this class, and we'll see then what they do beyond it.
I will say this. I love the fact they can play nickel, Jerry. They needed someone with a little bit of that versatility in that secondary, because if you look at the 2025 season, Jalen Gilbo expected to return. He'll be the nickel, right? The only other person behind him right now, next year, ostensibly, will be Wardell Mack, the true freshman out of Louisiana, right?
Very similar frames, by the way.
What's that?
Very similar frames, by the way.
Yes, and that's what I'm getting at. And so that is something that Texas needs at this point, is more in that category.
Yeah, somebody's asking about the corner that flipped from Texas to LSU. That was Cade Phillips, but Texas was recruiting him as a safety. LSU recruited him as a corner, thus the flip. By the way, Michael Terry, we still feel like Texas is in a really good spot for Michael Terry. Javion Hilson, I mentioned, is it's coming down to a Texas versus Texas A&M decision from a kid in Cocoa, Florida. I mean, that's moving to the SEC. If anything ever defined a move to the SEC, that recruitment's it. A top 50 kid, top 40 kid in the country in Cocoa, Florida, is going to decide between Texas and Texas A&M, barring a change in the last couple of weeks. I'm not worried about Jamie French in Florida. I said it yesterday. I'm not worried about that. I'll let everybody else freak out about that one. If Miami made a move, that's always been the second school. I'm not worried about Florida at this point. If it changes, I'll let you know, but I'd be surprised.
Lots of questions rolling in. Super chats, people asking about Colt. I'll give you all an update on that in a minute. But first, Bobby, can you tell us about Austin Underground?
I can. Rick Vavro has been opened Austin Underground back in 2004 and is specialized in difficult underground commercial installations. The team's engineering background gives Austin Underground the ability to perform work other firms often consider too risky. Rick Vavro and his team offer an end-to-end client experience, including seamless communication, budgeting, staffing, and top-notch trade partners. And most importantly, they produce solid quality work each and every time. That's Austin Underground. He also has a sister company called Texas Road. If you need any kind of asphalt pavement done in large quantities, reach out to Texas Road. Rick, by the way, has some other things. He's a little bit of an entrepreneur. He's got some other things in the work that we'll tell you guys about a little bit later.
Okay, guys, the new availability report came out last night here. And as you can see, Texas now, of course, with 5 out and 1 doubtful. The 5 being Derek Williams, C.J. Baxter, Christian Clark, Velton Gardner, and Colton Bostic. And then, of course, Blackwell listed as doubtful. Y'all's thoughts?
Well, the big news here is Braylon Russell moving up to probable, right? Because Taylon Green and Jaquindon Jackson were already going to be probable and going to play in this game. But Braylon Russell, another bruising running back for the Razorbacks, will be expected to play. Starting kicker for them, Kyle Ramsey, out, as well as a starting DB, Jalen Braxton, who was an all-SEC type of guy for them. And they haven't exactly been, top stuff in the secondary at this point at Arkansas. The one note on Mo Blackwell at Texas, it's my understanding it is a hamstring issue for Mo Blackwell that he is fighting. He will be expected to make the trek to Fayetteville. Not sure if he's going to play, though. We'll see if that happens.
Yeah, I don't have any thoughts other than what I've already talked about. I mean, look, Ramsey, they'd already played 2 kickers. Ramsey hadn't had a good year from 40 to 49. I think he was 3-9, maybe, or 3-8. So he had not had an accurate season kicking the ball. Their backup was getting looks anyways. I think the Braxton injury is key for them. He was their best secondary guy. They've given up 880 yards, and he's not the sole reason. 880 yards passing the last 2 weeks, or right around there. I mean, you're not beating anybody doing that. I'm sorry. I mean, they did beat Mississippi State because Mississippi State's a bad team. But if you play a competent team and you can't defend the pass on that level, I mean, Jackson Dart goes into your house and throws for 515 against the 3 high. That's pretty bad. So, and I thought it was a real neg. And look, the game, it's a rivalry game. It's in Arkansas. Texas is favored for a reason. But look, when Sam Pittman in his press conference said, yeah, we kind of, we're having competition in our secondary, I was like, ooh, that's not good. You're headed into game 10. I mean, that means if 3 spots are open for competition going into week 10, that's not what a coach wants to say in a press conference. That's what I'll say that much at least.
That reminds me of linebacker and defensive end at Texas about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Game, after teams ran the ball all over Texas, that it was an open competition, and look, that typically doesn't work. Texas is going to have to, if they can, guys, going to have to try to take it to Arkansas and get them to be one-dimensional, if at all possible, because I do think their run game can pose some problems to Texas. This will be the best offense overall Texas has faced, probably. I thought going into this season that Georgia might be better, but frankly, Carson Beck hasn't allowed them to be better, and they may not have the skill position at wide receiver. Like Andrew Armstrong at Arkansas, the wide receiver there is better than any wide receiver at Georgia right now. They've got strong running back, good quarterback play overall. We'll have to see what happens.
The big thing there, the matchup I'm watching, Arkansas's right tackle has really struggled in pass pro this year. And that's good news if Colin Simmons and those guys are watching the tape. There's an advantage there, and Arkansas as a whole gives up a lot of quarterback pressures. They struggle in pass pro, and that's probably one of those combined reasons why Arkansas quarterbacks, Ashley S., who was the backup, Malachi Singleton, freshman, Taylon Green and Singleton have combined for 14 fumbles. I'm not saying fumbles lost, but 14 fumbles in 9 games. That's a massively high number when you also have 7 interceptions. And now Taylon Green's an inconsistent guy, and he's a hot and cold, streaky passer. But 14 fumbles in 9 games is a huge number. And so, you look at it and say, man, their quarterbacks have fumble issues. Yeah, but how many have been a backside hit? How many have just been because protection just broke down and guys trying to make something out of nothing and keep a play alive? But Arkansas's offensive line struggled in pass pro. And I think Texas has some clear advantages that they can win in this game.
Okay, we've seen a little movement on the line here. And
This will make Bobby very happy.
but a little bit. Yeah, Bobby will be happy. Texas now a 12.5-point favorite. Of course, it opened on Sunday with Texas being a 16-point favorite. But weather overall hasn't changed, just the line by half a point.
Actually, it was at 13.5 yesterday, wasn't it? So down to 12.5 now.
Yeah. I think 13.
Look, somebody's got one of our here. Chad Wilson has this. Hogs are 6-1 against the spread since '92 against Texas. Hope the Horns are ready to go. In other words, the Hogs lie in wait to eat you. So we'll see how it goes. What are we thinking on this game? Like, where are we thinking point wise? It looks like teams they're basically saying the score is going to be roughly 35-22.
I had 36-23 in a prediction with CJ yesterday, so I'm sitting on that line, 36-37 to 23-ish. That's where I'm at.
I went 34-26. I went 30. I think Texas just has the better team. That being said, I think the Longhorns need to make sure they get out in front of Arkansas. They can't let Arkansas sit back and do a little bit of what Mississippi State did to them and just run the ball and run the clock. The other thing that I would say that Arkansas has had issues in this year, Jerry, that we need to be on the lookout for, they've had some issues in the red zone.
Oh, yeah.
They haven't scored touchdowns as often as they'd like. And so that if Texas scores touchdowns themselves instead of field goals, that could allow the Longhorns to push the lead a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing is with me is not good in red zone, ranked around 97 to 98 in that area. They've moved the ball up and down the field. I think they're second or third in the SEC, but they haven't converted enough. And some of that's been turnovers, obviously. Kicker the kicker who's injured was not having a good year from 40 to 49 as well. So when they've got on the other opponents inside the 50, they've kind of struggled to finish drives, whether that be in the red zone, whether that be kicking field goals. So we'll see where they're at with that on Saturday. The other thing is, when I look at this game, here's why I think it's a revenge game for Sark. First of all, he's done pretty well in those. I got embarrassed games and I didn't like it. He's come back pretty strong in those games, right? But we're getting to the point where you want to win the football game and get back to Austin. That's number one. But two, we still got to start thinking Ole Miss just beat them. Annihilated them at home. And if we get into these scenarios where you got 5 teams for 4 spots at 10-2, and they get to start looking at, and I know it's not transitive, but they start looking at these results, you're like, well, Texas, they struggled and they won 30, they won the 24 up in Arkansas. Ole Miss 2 weeks before that threw for 1,000,000 yards and scored 63 points. So some of these things could come into play. So while getting out with a win is always number one, I do think covering this, there may be some hidden meaning in that at the end of the year, the way things are breaking with a playoff committee having to make decisions.
Could be. In that instance, I would remind them that Tennessee went to Arkansas and lost.
Right.
So let's put that out there as well. So, look, we can talk about these at length. The real issue is Texas has to take care of its own business. Texas takes care of its own business the next 3 games. The Longhorns are in it. Blake, you had some long-term odds to share as well, not just with this Texas-Arkansas game, but some other ones, including Kentucky and Texas A&M. I thought those were interesting too, Jerry, just to give people a glance maybe at what's ahead for the Longhorns if they were to play today. These are the current lines. Texas favored by 21 against Kentucky.
Yeah.
Probably like we said yesterday, Kentucky's won 1 SEC game thus far this season. And somehow that's against that Ole Miss team you were just talking about. Perhaps that was early in the year when Ole Miss was just getting the runway started with all their transfers that we talked about yesterday. But look at the line of the A&M game that Blake's going to put up. Texas currently favored by 4.5 in College Station. That's pretty strong considering it's going to be in College Station. That's kind of crazy. But I will say this: Texas can't afford to look ahead to these two games. They look past Arkansas, and all of a sudden they get walloped by Braylon Russell and Jaquindon Jackson running the football. Texas is in trouble.
I would think both of those lines move down closer to the opponent as the games get closer, right? I mean, barring some major injuries. That's what's normally happening. I could see Kentucky, like 17.5, 18.5. Not that I'm a betting guy, but I just think it's going to move in that direction. But yeah, no, it's things are setting up really well for Texas right now. I think Texas is going to go in and play well in Arkansas. I really do. And I think offensive lines made some adjustments there. I think Quinn is feeling better, gaining confidence after losing quite a bit of confidence. I think he's playing at a higher level. I think Isaiah Bond being back healthier week by week. Andrew Makuba, the same thing. And that's one of the things I point at. Texas is a healthier team than Arkansas going into this game. I mean, that's the reality of this is Arkansas is missing their best DB. Taylor Green's going to be – he's not going to be 100% the rest of the year. He's exposed. His knees get hit. 44 of his runs have been QB counter in type of runs in between the tackles. It started in between the tackles. Going to be hard to keep a 6'6" quarterback that's built like a basketball player healthy doing that in the SEC. Running backs are banged up for them, but they're going to go, obviously. But Texas is a healthier team. They're a better team, and they're a healthier team going into Arkansas. And I'm not trying to discount the home field and what it would mean to Arkansas fans this game and to beat Texas, but Texas should win this game.
All right. Let's see here. One thing I wanted to ask y'all about, if I can get it to come up, looking at the SEC schedule this weekend, but we're getting very close to the season being over. So what SEC coaches are on the hot seat, and who do you think will be going first?
Woo! That's a great question. Good thing for Venables, he's off this weekend. Good or bad, because he may keep his office door locked all week. Look, what happens if Sam Pittman loses this game, Bobby? Because he beat Tennessee. You would think he's okay, but you look at the last 3 games of that schedule. If he loses to Texas, then he's got to come up with 1 or 2 more.
Yeah.
5-7 won't get it done.
Yeah, you wouldn't think that would happen. I think Hugh Freeze is likely safe.
Yeah.
Although him losing commitments of late, Jerry, stranger things have happened. If he loses the quarterback commit, for example, to Ole Miss, was his name Deuce Knight? Is that right?
Yeah.
He somehow loses that one. Yeah. He flipped to Auburn from Notre Dame, but it's my understanding Lane Kiffin was visiting him yesterday or the day before. They just got the Caleb Cunningham to go to Ole Miss as well, the wide receiver. I just can tell you this: those guys don't have much. They don't have much patience for losers at Auburn. And if Auburn loses to not the UL Monroe, they're favored by 24. Texas beat that same UL Monroe team by 48, by the way. I think that there are issues there on the Plains. Other than that, I don't see anybody other than possibly Billy Napier, if something happens, going down.
I'm going to throw one out there. And I'm not saying it's going to happen. Mark Stoops got on a plane to leave Kentucky and take the A&M job. And he got to Easterwood, and they turned that thing around and flew him back home. If he loses out, beats Murray State, but Texas beats him down and Louisville beats him down, never know. I don't think so. But
I don't think so, because I don't think they care enough about football there.
Yeah.
Like, he's the best football coach they've had since Bear Bryant.
And they've had a ton of injuries this year, by the way. A ton of injuries. But he still got on a plane and said goodbye.
Yeah,
he was leaving.
I know.
It
wouldn't fly. That wouldn't fly for Texas football.
Right.
I agree with you. Kentucky football, even though they have actually a pretty decent fan base, it's not. I mean, their fan base, Kentucky football's fan base is larger than Iowa State's football fan base. Just to give you an approximation, but it's not that strong overall. It's not what rules the roost in Kentucky. We all know basketball does that.
And I know
they have some forgiveness for what they call secondary sports there.
And I know Florida came out and gave Billy Napier the vote of confidence, which is good or bad, depending on how you read those things. But just lost 49-17. If LSU beats them by a couple touchdowns and Ole Miss comes in and thumps them the week after, things still could get interesting. What you better not do is go lose at FSU.
Hey, Jerry.
Better not do is lose at FSU. And then Oklahoma, I still think, look, lose to Alabama at home and it's ugly. Lose at LSU and it's ugly. You never know. I mean, there's 4 coaches that I'm kind of keeping my eye on right now in this conference.
I think you could end up with none, though. It's more likely to end up with none than it is to end up with 2. Just my opinion. You know that the line. Do you know the line, Jerry and Blake, for Tennessee? Or excuse me, for LSU going to Florida?
It's way too low.
It's 4.
Yeah, whatever.
Holy cow.
Whatever. They must have missed Florida's secondary, not in all their corners out. I mean, LSU's
or they know something. I mean, look, Brian Kelly should be on the hot seat potentially. Just going to put that out there.
Aiden Warner is not a running threat at quarterback. Even if they try to trot DJ Lagway out there with 7 rolls of tape on his hamstring, he's not either. LSU's going to win that game.
Yeah. I want to say this. Has there been anybody that's underperformed more given what he's been put out there for him? I mean, Brian Kelly had a Heisman winning quarterback that I just watched in person, by the way, last night. Heisman winning quarterback, 2 first-round draft picks at receiver, untold talent at offensive line. He's out of the playoffs both years, no chance. I mean, has anybody done less with more than Brian Kelly?
Had some unfortunate injuries there too, but yep, we'll see. I think the guy's a good football coach.
Okay, but they don't pay you to be a good football coach at LSU.
Yeah,
that would be my comment.
If he finishes 9-3, which I think they will, then it's 9-3 with their injuries is pretty interesting to me. But you know. The Bo Davis. Zane Petty says Bo Davis sucks. They had 3D linemen drafted last year, and their best guy lost the second game of the season, man. At least do some homework first on that one.
Well, I would say that their issue is
Nick Saban's tried to hire the guy literally 3 times. I don't think Bo Davis is a bad coach unless you think Saban does not know what he's looking at. Just a reminder.
I think that the problem with LSU is stopping a running quarterback. They've had no chance of understanding, and I think that comes down to the defensive coordinator getting his guys ready. Now, he's been successful elsewhere, but I think they were just totally unprepared for the quarterback run against Alabama last week and clearly against A&M a month ago.
St. Petty said he was joking, by the way.
I never know with the chat who's joking and not about that.
It's been very lively in the chat today.
It's wild. You never know who to believe on that. The guy went from a favorite to public enemy in a matter of like 3 weeks.
Before we move on, Bobby, because we got a lot of super chats that we need to get to, tell us about Tecovas.
Yeah, we'd like to welcome Tecovas as a sponsor of On Texas Football. Texans know that anywhere worth going is worth going in good boots. Tecovas are handcrafted with every stitch on point. Tecovas boots are made for a good time and a long time. I love the fact that they're already broken in for comfort right out of the box. And Tecovas makes it easy for anyone to find their favorite boot. With all kinds of sizes and styles, Tecovas are simply the best boot around. I really like that they can either be daily boots or you can feel dressed up with them. Right now, get 10% off at tecovas.com/Texas football when you sign up for emails or texts. That's 10% off at tecovas.com/Texas football. With Tecovas Best in the West guarantee, you also get free returns and exchanges for 30 days. Can't beat that. Tecovas.com/Texas football. See site for more details. Tecovas, point your toes west.
Hey, Blake, I was traveling yesterday. We still don't have a Aaliyah Chavez answer, right? I know she had 8 threes the other night, but I guess
So I did talk to I did talk to a high school girls coach yesterday, basketball coach yesterday, and she told me that she firmly believes, and this is somebody that has, a daughter that plays in a lot of these select tournaments that's very good, that she believes that Chavez will go to Texas. So that's what she's heard. So we'll see what happens.
I mean, the thing with Chavez, the one thing I just kind of have always wondered about with her recruitment is just knowing basketball, once you get through the Nike stuff, is, you rise to number one in the country. Are you doing that to not go to the biggest conference and then one of the marquee brands? Now, I mean, if you just follow this stuff, it's very rare what a Kevin Durant did. And the interesting thing about Kevin Durant, and this is his time for those that don't know Kevin Durant's recruitment, his dad, Wayne Pratt, I've known for years. I was talking to Wayne one day because I just figured Kevin would go to North Carolina, right? And he said, to Connecticut in Texas. And he said, Jerry, Kevin could go win National Player of the Year at Texas and be a legend. He could go to Carolina. They'd go 38-0, win a national title. He could play 18 minutes a game because they're so good. But he said he goes to Texas and he does what he's capable of doing. And he said he does that at Texas. He said he creates a legend there. That very rare that somebody thinks like that, like Kevin's dad did. Most people just go to the marquee program, so it's going to be interesting to see what she does. Things line up for Texas, so I'll say that.
All right, y'all, we got super chats and Bobby. And by the way, Bobby, thank you once again for everything you did for my son. Bobby Gaithright says, Jerry, please give a short eval on the 5 offensive line commits. But I also want to add this in before you do that, Jerry. This one from Max. Max says, low key, my favorite commit is John Mills. He's just plain mean.
I love John Mills as a prospect. He plays with the toughness. He's got really good feet and body quickness too for a big kid. He's 6'5 and a half, 330-ish right now. Having a strong senior season, plays left tackle for them. He'll probably get a try right tackle, probably settles at guard though, a Mauler type of guard. I love John Mills. Look, and somebody in the chat asked about Texas and offensive line recruiting. Well, I think the rankings are off on the Colemans from Cedar Hill. I'm just going to put that out there. I saw them as juniors. I've seen them this season. I think Devin and Jordan have a lot of ability from Cedar Hill. Devin could be a center or guard. Jordan going to be a guard. But those guys are powerful kids. I mean, they are powerful kids with enough foot quickness, with enough body quickness. I mean, Devin Coleman's the D lineman that's going to end up playing on the offensive line. I mean, he's a really good athlete. I think those guys have a lot of upside. Really well coached by Marcus Hutchins, former Texas offensive tackle, who's the offensive line coach and recruiting coordinator at Cedar Hill. Nick Brooks, saw him this year. Look, I don't know if Nick Brooks is going to play tackle or guard. Some of that's going to have to be determined. I think he's got the foot and body quickness to play tackle. He's got the length to play tackle. But sometimes with those guys, you just got to see him going against a Colin Simmons every single day, because even though despite they play against high-level competition in high school, you still got to see that at the Power 4 level. When one rep it's Colin Simmons, the next rep you're going against Colton Vossing, and just how do you stand up rep after rep with that in terms of your foot quickness, your body quickness, your peripheral, how do you react at all that stuff. But Nick Brooks is a monster of a human being. I mean, you're talking 6'7", 355. He wants to play at 335. I think that move to Grayson's been really, even though they've had like 3 games canceled this year, either teams canceled on them, hurricane, whatnot. I think that move's been really good for Nick Brooks. Then Jackson Christian, They're going to play guard for Texas out of PNG, another well-coached team. Lost in the state title his sophomore year, won it last year. I think he's got a chance to be a quality guard. So I like the offensive line class they have committed, Bobby. I think the question is, do they have a tackle in this class?
Yeah, I think that's fair. You know, I watched John Mills the other day. That we got asked about him. Jackson Christian, another one. I think more guard than tackle. I think that's a fair assessment. Who is the highest rated of this group right now?
Nick Brooks. Nick Brooks.
Of all of them, I actually think that Nick Brooks may have the furthest to go physically in ways.
Agree.
And so that's kind of what I took away from that group. Even though he may have, like Cam Williams, not unlike that. I mean, I should say, coming out of high school, Cam had the physical traits of, you know, that are just rare, period. Right. Yes. I think that that's the case there, but I think he also had a bit of a ways to go. And so I look at John Mills right now, and I'm not so sure he's not here. One of the Colemans are not the best linemen ready to go out of the gate. That's my take on it. Now, long term, looking 2 or 3 years down the road, different story. Yeah. Different story for that.
I think it'll be interesting.
I think John Mills is a bigger Cole Hudson.
I agree.
Very same demeanor, nastiness a little bit to him.
Yep.
Maybe a tad more athletic.
More athletic, a little longer arms, but yeah, as far as play, the way they play.
Yep.
Yeah. Somebody asked him, I think Zane Petty asked, is Nick Brooks flipping to Auburn? Nick Brooks told me 2 days ago, no official visit to Auburn. So we'll continue to monitor that. He went to the Auburn game a couple of weeks ago with about 4 or 5 Grayson teammates. And I said at the time, if he comes back for a second visit, then it's an official visit, then we have something to talk about. He told me no official visit. Let's see if he shows up anywhere this weekend or next weekend when they play A&M. Auburn's trying, but so far, no. By the way, conflicting if Myron Charles is actually going to show up in Gainesville Saturday. Here's what I'll say about Myron Charles. Miami thought they were going to get him on campus a couple of weeks ago, and he didn't. He canceled their day before, a couple of days before. Just something to follow there. I'm not worried about Florida with Myron Charles.
Trace Little with the Super Chat says, remember when people lost their minds when we started recruiting more out of state?
Oh, my God.
LOL.
Look, I mean, this is what Texas done in Florida they could have not always done this. In the 90s, you couldn't recruit in Florida. I mean, Florida State, and Miami ran college football. But now Texas can have even more success in Florida. It just depends on how many resources. When I say resources, coaches' time on the road, as far as how many days you have on the road, they want to put into this. I think, look, the move to the SEC, the kids that have grown up in Florida, they've been in Florida their whole lives. So a lot of those kids just want to get out and do something different. I mean, that's the same thing in Texas. There's kids in Texas that say, man, I've been here my whole life. I just want to go do something different. There's nothing wrong with that. So if you know your state kids are going to do that, then you need to identify the state the other kids want to do that. And I think Florida is one of those states, until Florida State and Florida get their stuff figured out. And can all 3 of those teams be good again at the same time, Bobby, is a question. College football's changed. But until they get it figured out, I think it's a great opportunity. But just think about what Alabama under Nick Saban did in the state of Florida. Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, Calvin Ridley. I mean, I can keep going. I mean, Georgia, Tyson Campbell, Isaiah McKenzie, James Cook. We can keep going. Like, because Florida State, and Miami have all been in flux and just inconsistent for well over a decade now, you can go get really good players out of that state. But you got to commit the time to doing it, because there's a lot of guys. So maybe you pick your areas. I think the I-4 corridor. So kind of the people that aren't familiar with the state of Florida in recruiting, if Florida's running hot and cold. When Florida's really good, Tampa area kids tend to go to Florida. And so when they're or Tampa, Orlando kids, it's tougher to get kids from there if Florida's on an upswing. If they're not, things are different down there. Obviously, Dayton Broward is Miami and Florida State by and large, but things changed when 7-on-7 started and kids started seeing the world down there. Before they didn't see the world. So that's kind of your pockets. Jacksonville's kind of wide open hunting ground. And you saw Texas go in and get Jamie French. Texas is winning recruitments in the state of Florida in places they never have. And that's a good sign for Texas. And I think the more they recruit in Texas, the more they'll have success, especially if this next group of kids come in and play and do very well. Cedric Baxter starting was a big deal. Bobby Jarrett Gibson, maybe he didn't play for 3 games. He has had a big game against Florida, the team he was committed to and grew up cheering for. Dia Bell's a big-time quarterback, obviously. Jamie French, if he comes in and does really well at Texas, that only helps more.
Yeah, I was not one of those people that were up in arms about Texas recruiting nationally. Not at all. And so, Trace, I appreciate you saying that. Maybe some people were. You got to go where the players are. This is a player-led business, not a coach-led business. I guess coaches are the leaders, but players are the winners. You know, Steve Sarkisian is 3 years away from being a 5-7 coach with lesser players. He hadn't changed fundamentally as a coach. Okay, it's the Jimmies and Joes is more than the X's and O's. So you go where you can find them. In my opinion, I would only add this to what Jerry's saying. The thing that is different about the state of Florida is it's kind of tucked away a little bit. So you get a lot of teams from the Midwest and from the Southeast recruiting Florida. You don't necessarily get many West Coast teams recruiting Florida. The thing about Texas being smack dab in the middle of the United States, you get the Midwest teams coming down, you get the East Coast teams coming over, you get the West Coast teams trying to. I mean, Texas is, as a whole, a more competitive recruiting ground than the state of Florida, because Florida geographically is way tucked in the bottom right-hand corner of the United States, which actually, if you go recruit there, can be more advantageous for you because there's a little less competition. That's a reality. You're competing against Virginia, Maryland, and I don't know, Penn State more often in Florida than you are in Texas, right? So
to add to what Bobby said, this has kind of been my model for Texas recruiting, especially in the SEC. Obviously, your home state's always number one, right? But you're never going to keep even if A&M and Texas are both on a upswing at the same time, which they haven't been since the early 70s, right? You're not going to keep all these kids at home because a lot of kids, it's more transient. A lot of these kids haven't grown up in Texas. A lot of people have moved to Texas, and these kids didn't grow up with A&M and Texas jerseys on. There's not as much of an allegiance anymore. I also think not having that rivalry game has helped teams coming to Texas and recruit. But if Texas can recruit Texas, Florida, Georgia enough, California enough, that's going to be 70-75% of your class. Then you go cherry pick Arizona. Occasionally, right? There's Texas signed 4 guys from Arizona, 2 have transferred. Obviously, your deep snapper's a starter. Santana Wilson, they really like redshirting. But Louisiana's been good. All that Louisiana depends on where the LSU program is. I mean, you throw Arch Manning out, that's different, right? But where the LSU program is, you go in and get Derek Williams from there, and when they're maybe not as strong as they have been. If it was in the Nick Saban days when he was about to win titles, you aren't getting Derek Williams. But now you can go in and win some of those battles from time to time, and then pick off maybe some kids in a kid in Atlanta, Alabama or Mississippi every now and again. But Mississippi's tough if Ole Miss is winning, by the way. It's a tougher area.
We're going to get to more of y'all's questions and super chats here in just a moment. But first, let me tell you about Tile. The holidays are upon us. Of course, Thanksgiving right down the road here, just a couple of weeks away, and then we'll march on to Christmas. And while it's the most wonderful time of the year, it also presents a ton of challenges. Whether you're staying at home or traveling, it's busy season, and keeping track of what matters most to you can feel more hectic than merry. So stress less this holiday by stocking up on Life 360's tile trackers. When you're worried about your family's safety or something goes missing, just use the Tile app. That's what I use it for when something goes missing. I use it to keep track of my keys, my kids, my wife. They'll set them down in different places. I can't ever find them, and I just don't have time to look everywhere for them. But with Tile, I don't have to worry. I just ring my Tile when they go missing, or I can even track down their location on the map. You can also add your tile trackers to your Life 360 and see your family and all of your family stuff in one spot. So family-proof your family with Life 360's tile trackers. Visit tile.com today and use code ONTEXAS to get 15% off. That's tile.com, promo code ONTEXAS for 15% off. And Jerry, if you'll let us know about Manscaped as well, I would appreciate it.
Oh, I certainly can. I'm on the road. The 5.0 goes on the road, baby, but we're talking about the Chairman Pro package today. Yes, I love the noise. This episode is brought to you by Manscaped. Arkansas is not going to like that noise 11 a.m. in Fayetteville, though. The global leader in men's lifestyle and grooming. Every man knows the unbeatable feeling of a fresh barbershop shave. Now, what if I told you that you no longer have to wait weeks or even months between appointments to experience it? Introducing Manscaped's latest release, the Chairman Pro package. The all-in-one set includes everything you need to recreate the luxury of a professional shave right at home. Whether you prefer that daily smooth, silky smooth finish or prefer a maintained rugged 5 o'clock shadow, the Chairman Pro package has you covered. Head over to manscaped.com and join the over 11 million men and growing worldwide who trust Manscaped by using On Texas, all caps, for 20% off plus free shipping. Look, the Chairman Pro is an electric foil shaver. This just isn't any shaver. It comes with 2 interchangeable skin-safe blade heads. You have the skin-safe 4-blade foil for that close, smooth shave when you're looking to go completely clean, or the stubble trimmer for when you want to keep a bit of that rugged look. Texas players, take the rugged look to Fayetteville and show them who's boss. Manscaped, 20% off On Texas, all caps.
Thank you, Jerry. We're going to get into some more super chats. Let's take this one here from Longhorn Frenzy. Thank you, Longhorn Frenzy. He says, tell Colt that his fingers aren't broken. We need a super chat from him. And ye shall receive.
Yes.
Colt,
Colt. Awesome.
Says, thank y'all for everything. And then Brandon Huey with the super chat says, Colt, hey, buddy. So Colt is back. We brought him home last night. He got to sleep in his own bed as well. He was just as excited as I was because those hospital beds are killers. But yes, he is back. He's doing good, and he'll start physical therapy on Monday. When we did get some good news, we thought he was going to be out till February as far as doing athletic stuff. He'll be able to start lifting weights and throwing the baseball here in about 6 to 8 weeks. So, 4 to 6 weeks. So it won't be long at all. So
I thought about stealing second base and videoing it for Colt, but my hamstrings, Achilles, hips, shoulders, and hands all said no.
Not to mention the base stealing glove that you would probably have to wear, not to jam your fingers. Yeah.
Right. It would have been bad.
When did they come up with a base stealing glove? I mean, what?
Oh, I told my son when he bought one originally, I was like, that's just stupid. and I was like, no one's wearing those. And he's like, Dad, everybody's wearing them, blah, blah. So I buy them. And of course, they're just like everything else in baseball. They're super expensive.
Yeah,
we get to the tournament and every kid has one on. I was like, okay, everyone is wearing them. And somebody's
how expensive are those, Blake? I was going to ask. I haven't looked at how expensive are those?
I think the one that he got is around $85, $90.
Holy!
I mean, baseball is simple in the equipment side of things, but it's hands down. And I mean, I got kids that play every sport just about. It's hands down the most expensive sport.
Yeah,
y'all don't even want to know how much money we spend.
I don't now.
It's insane. So anyway, but yes, Colt is home, everybody. Thank you all for your support and prayers. Mikey the Mexican says, for Mr. Colt Monroe, Godspeed for him for a fast recovery. I was wondering, guys, Do y'all believe that Jonte Cook was a product of bad culture fit? And should we be worried of more bad apples in the bunch?
Always be worried about bad apples in the bunch. I don't know that Jonte Cook was necessary or is necessarily a bad apple in the bunch. I think it just didn't work out for him at Texas. And the primary reason was he wasn't as good as the other players. I mean, I'm not sure what else to say. Now, was some of that his own doing? Could be. We're not in those locker rooms, guys. So the reality of it is he got beat. He was running first team all spring and all summer. When Silas Bolden showed up, Ryan Wingo came in ready to go. Things changed for Jonte Cook. Isaiah Bond and Matthew Golden ended up being more ready to go, according to not me or Jerry or anybody else, but according to Steve Sarkisian. And ultimately, that's what matters. I will say this. I mean, a lot of people make mention of Jonte's drop against Mississippi State. That certainly didn't help his cause. But I want to say this. His relative inability to block compared to some other people on there from a willingness standpoint and execution may have been a bigger piece of this than a lot of people want to admit. It wasn't just about that big drop against Mississippi State. More than one thing. That always plays into it. People aren't looking for things like that. But if Isaiah Bond can then get out there and block better than Jonte, I got news for you. You know, if DeAndre Moore blocks better than Jonte and is reasonably the same receiver, guess who's going to play?
Edmund Lee, by the way, my apologies. We had some kind of glitch and it wasn't showing your super chat to me for some reason. Got that fixed. But thank you, Edmund. He says, good morning, OTF family and Longhorn Nation. Drinking Whataburger coffee and eating a sausage egg taco. Texas 35, Arkansas 17. And Colt, happy that you are better.
I could be doing. I think I could handle a Whataburger sausage and egg taco right now. I'll be honest. I'm starving. That sounds good.
And then we have one here from Bob E. Burton. That's pretty witty, I gotta say. Same people who were knocking Texas last year on the eye test are knocking Texas on strength of schedule, despite passing the eye test. But can we afford to drop a game?
Yeah, they can afford to drop a game, but if you drop a game, you put your future in the hands of other people. I still think Texas could get in at 10-2. I absolutely do, because I think there's more football to be played right now. Notre Dame loses to USC in 2 weeks.
That's the one.
This becomes a 5-team SEC draw, potentially. Yep. I would also say this. Texas right now is beating other teams more convincingly than other teams are beating. You know, Texas beats Florida 49-17. What did Georgia beat? And I know Texas has a head-to-head loss to Georgia. I get it. But Texas has been blowing teams out, frankly. I mean, 34-3 over OU.
You want to know?
Let's see what happens, and let's see what that looks like. I mean, look, I'll give you another one. Texas goes and beats Arkansas on the road. Well, Tennessee lost to Arkansas on the road. You know, Ole Miss loses to Kentucky. Well, Texas is getting ready to play Kentucky. Let's talk about the whole season, and I think that's one of the pieces. If a team doesn't trip up, there's value in that. It's not just always about your best wins or your best losses, so to speak.
I think there's two key things here for Texas that you can feel comfortable if you drop a game. And I'm saying if, but that's what we're talking about, scenarios, because that's all we're talking about, scenarios right now. It may be tough. You got to be a big Tennessee fan this weekend, because if Tennessee were to upset Georgia in Athens, and it would be an upset in Athens, then Georgia's done. They're out. Third loss, they're out. If that doesn't happen, and I tend to think Georgia will win that game. And I'm not saying they're going to beat them down or anything. I tend to think Georgia will bounce back and win that game. Then a Notre Dame loss is the key. if Tennessee beats Georgia, then that pretty much takes care of things. So Texas would have they would have a loss to play with, still be 10-2, and Georgia at 9-3 is not getting in over a 10-2 Texas team. Even though they beat Texas, they wouldn't get in at 9-3, in my opinion. So there's that one. If Georgia beats Tennessee, then you need Notre Dame to lose if you want 5 10-2 SEC teams in, because Alabama looks like they're going 10-2. Ole Miss is going to go 10-2. If Georgia beats Tennessee, they're probably going 10-2 because they have UMass and Georgia Tech at home. If Tennessee loses, they have a UTEP, then they still go to Vandy, but they'll be favored over Vandy because their defense and run game. So decent chance they go 10-2. If those 4 teams are 10-2 and A&M's 9-2 and Texas is 10-1 going into College Station, that's where it gets a little messy for Texas. So if Tennessee can beat Georgia, that's a good thing. If you don't want to have the 10-2 scenario talk, or if Notre Dame loses to USC and there's 5 10-2 teams in the SEC, they'll all go.
All right, Maddie M., thank you for the super chat. Maddie says, morning, boys. Love the OTF programs. Hoping Silas Bolden houses one this week. Loved him since you interviewed him after the commitment. That was a great interview. Tough, max effort, lays out for catches, puts defenders on skates. Horns, 38-16. Hook 'em.
I'll tell you this, Texas scores on special teams. It's likely to be a rout. So that would be huge. Silas has come close a couple times, Jerry. Hadn't quite popped it all the way, but come close a couple of times, and he is fearless back there. Let's see if Texas can score in special teams. Don't you think this is going to be a big one for Texas? I mean, that just smells of, okay, Texas got a real chance to blow it open here if they can do that.
Yeah, look, I would love for Matthew Golden, like Ivory Martin said, Matthew Golden actually get a well-blocked kickoff return without a penalty.
Yeah.
You know, I like that comment. Don't underestimate Georgia Tech. My take on that Georgia Tech game is, look, if Tennessee beats Georgia this weekend and Georgia has nothing to play for, I could see Georgia Tech pulling that game off. But if Georgia's sitting there at 9-2 and they're sitting there saying, if we win, we're in the playoff, I don't like Tech's chances in that scenario.
After getting snubbed last year.
Yeah.
You know, Georgia got snubbed last year a little bit, guys.
Yeah. So
if God forbid we lose to Aggie, we need blowouts the next 2 games.
True.
Maybe, Jeff. We'll see.
I know I'm probably I'll be getting made fun of for this, but I actually think Auburn will give A&M a game. Auburn is, if they have any fight left in them, Auburn has had a lot. If you just look at, they've had bad turnovers, but they've been in games. They've been in all these games, and they're not a team that's getting blown out. They have high-level athletes over there. They have just been awful on offense at their absolute worst time. Are they going to really go over at home in SEC play? A&M's going to. I think they'll give A&M a game if they're still interested.
I'll just say this: they only scored 7 against Vanderbilt's defense. You think they're going to score more than 7 against A&M's? I mean, they're brutally bad. I think Auburn is brutally bad. They lost to what's the most they've scored? The most they've scored in SEC play this year is 21 points. And that was against Oklahoma. They scored 14 against Arkansas, 21 against Oklahoma, 13 against Georgia, 17 against Missouri. Oh, they beat Kentucky. Sorry. They scored 24 against Kentucky and 7 against Auburn.
Yeah. All it takes is one game, though. That's the thing.
That they play in 2 weeks. The Auburn game, when they host A&M, is at night. That might have some bearing. We'll see about that.
Ed B asked, what's Auburn's recruiting ranking? They're currently very, very few points, half points ahead of Texas by most people right now. By the way, with Grayson Littleton committing, that pushed Texas to 5, a solid 5 by everybody. And these are coming down to decimal points right now, 0.3, 0.5, whatever. But I will say for that, I should have said it earlier. If Texas closes out Michael Terry, then Texas would move to 3. So you're sitting there. If Texas wins the Michael Terry recruitment, they're sitting there at 3, and the rest of the guys left on the board are all 4-star level prospects. And, who knows if you can flip one late that's ranked really high. But that Grayson Littleton recruiting win, because he's ranked top 150 in the country, if you add Michael Terry to that, you're sitting at 3 with 3-4 spots left. And Javion Hilson's a top 50 kid in the country. I mean, everybody you're still in on. Even Kellen Wiley's going to move up the recruiting rankings. It's starting to happen when people are seeing his senior tape. If Texas wins that one, I think he may end up top 300 in the country as well when all's said and done, and maybe top 200 range in the country. He should be based on what I saw when I was over there. So Texas is there. If they close out Michael Terry, if they were to beat A&M for Javion Hilson, they may be sitting there with the number 2 class. For sure, 3 battling for 2.
We got a super chat here from TechStorm. Thank you, TechStorm. And they says, great show, guys. Thanks for all you do. What's the difference between Texas defense and LSU defense? Sorry, Bo Davis. No, sorry. He left.
I want to say this. First of all, it's the 4th year in the system for Pete Kwiatkowski versus the first for LSU. And we have seen Jerry talks about this a lot, the communication level on the Texas D improve by leaps and bounds. Right now, we have not seen that happen at LSU. They can't stop the zone read. If you can't stop the zone read in college football against a rushing quarterback, you're toast, because it's the easiest play call to make and to block. And that's where they're at right now on defense. So I think it's time with the coordinator. I do think it has some to do with personnel, but not a ton. LSU has plenty of good personnel overall. So I think it's just first-year coordinator, lost a couple players, that kind of thing.
I will say this. I agree. But traditional LSU teams, they're not as good on the D-line at corner as some of those really good teams have been. They have some work to do in the secondary. Because, everybody with LSU talks about, the D-line, the linebackers. They've had some tremendous secondary players come through there. Their corners right now are iffy. They got some work to do at defensive back there.
Maybe they'll lose Florida this weekend.
Yeah.
I'm telling you. I don't think they're a well-coached football team. Not on offense, not on defense. I think they're somewhat mediocre right now. I mean, they got all the talent in the world on offense, and I think they're somehow mediocre on offense. Scored 7 points against in real time against an Alabama team that gave up 40 to Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
They're not a well-coached team right now on either side of the ball. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Not just defense.
But they're playing Florida.
Yeah. True.
Well, true. Florida.
And they're playing Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Florida, we have a super chat here from Phil. And Phil says, was there any significance to Ewers heading to the tent against Florida? Apologies if I missed any news on that. Uncle.
There hasn't been any news. Jerry thought that maybe, hey, it's just he's coming out of the game. Let's go get any kind of rib pads off, et cetera, that he may need off after that, knowing he was going to be pulled. But I haven't heard anything beyond that, Phil. So if they're saying anything, no one is saying anything publicly right now. Could there be something to it? Yes, of course. But we don't know anything that we can share publicly at this time either.
I think the other thing there is he's going to be getting treatment on that the rest of the season. So if he's pulled out of a game, normally your treatment starts after a game. Maybe, you put them in the tent, you start your treatment just to get the rib pads off, do a little treatment that you'd be doing after a game if you played a whole game. Just throwing that out there. Somebody asked if Michael Fasusi's a 50-50 flip. I can't say that. I think, by the way, Texas and Texas A&M both have a lot of communication with him right now. So it's two teams battling Oklahoma. Oklahoma's battling both of them. But we'll see. We'll see what happens there. But communication continues to be steady, and for a while there, it was not. So it's moving in the right direction. But we'll have to see what happens. I think there's enough doubt there that is giving Texas and Texas A&M hope. I'll say that. But we'll see what happens. He wants to be at Oklahoma. We're about to find out how bad.
Bobby.
Yeah, I'll do it. Our friend Rick Vavro and his gang at Austin Underground since 2004 have specialized in difficult underground commercial installations. The team's engineering background gives Austin Underground the ability to perform work other firms often consider too risky. Rick Vavro, Tony, and his team offer an end-to-end client experience, including seamless communication, budgeting, staffing, and top-notch trade partners. And most importantly, they produce solid quality work each and every time. That's Austin Underground, as well as their sister company, Texas Road. Thanks for sponsoring On Texas Football, Coffee and Football.
We got a couple of questions left before we get out of here, guys. And the first one here is a super chat from Daryl. Thank you, Daryl. He says, how much does this team miss Joe DeCamillis?
Well, he was the former assistant special teams coach who is now the special teams coach at South Carolina. Do they miss him or do they miss a punter? I mean, that's
two
really
great guys.
Yeah. They need a punter right now. So that's my piece on it. I feel like Joe DeCamillis is a good coach. Really coaches up returns well. But largely speaking, they miss a punter and they miss the gunners, to Jerry's point. So
somebody in the chat asked who will be the starting offensive tackles next year. I think heading into spring practice will be Trevor Gooseby and Brandon Baker.
And then we have a super chat from Sean here. Thank you, Sean. And Sean says, our safety rotation is going to be excellent next year. Thank you guys for all the great work you do.
We'll see. Here, look, Jelani McDonald and Derek Williams definitely back. Michael Taft is actually a senior, so he could leave and go. You know that Andrew Makuba is gone. So we'll see what it looks like. But I think with Williams and McDonald certainly back, then you add in a guy like Jonah Williams, who I think is going to play early, no matter where he goes. Xavier Filsaime, Jordan Johnson-Rebel. Blake Gideon's got that room looking like he wants it to look. It looks like a big-time safety room right now.
And then we'll do one or two more. If I can get my mouse to cooperate here. Ashley asked, is there a reason we might lose this game? And what would that reason be?
If Texas lost to Arkansas, the reasons I would say would be Landon Jackson has a big game, causes a couple of turnovers on Texas end of the field. Some of the things that have popped up in prior games that popped up again. Missed field goal late in the game, something like that. Penalties in some key situations on key down and distances of drives, drive killers, turnovers on your own end of the field where that crowd really becomes the difference in the game. I mean, I think it would be Texas, and I'm not trying to not give an opponent credit, but I think Texas would have to beat themselves in this game. I mean, I hate to say it, but that's been the whole deal, Bobby.
Pass rush from Arkansas getting home would be the biggest one, because then Quinn does get Quinn's not great with pressure in his face. He's okay sometimes or most times, but he's not great. So I think pressure from Arkansas getting home would be one. turnovers would be 2, and then Arkansas's ability to run the football. That if Arkansas can combine running the football with getting pressure on Quinn Ewers, that's their winning recipe, in my opinion. And that pressure might elicit turnovers, and running the football might improve them in the red zone on their offense, for their offense.
This will be our last one. It's a super chat here from Jonathan Stoker. Jonathan, we appreciate it. And Jonathan says, trick plays. How about a reverse tight end pass from Juan Davis?
He played a little bit quarterback in high school, didn't he, Jerry, at times?
He did.
Maybe that's coming, and we just don't know it.
Jonathan may have the inside info.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, Bobby. Well, it's going to be a busy week here, or weekend, I guess I should say, on Texas football. I'm going to let you tell folks about it.
Yeah, absolutely. We will have a big weekend, starting with the Saturday conversation tomorrow morning. Texas tailgate. Jerry and I start talking. CJ's going to be on site there at 9:30. Then the watch with us with Aaron, Rod Babers, and Jerry, as well as Coach Bob Shipley. Then the post-game live, sponsored by our friends over at Flight, immediately following the game. Rod Babers and I would be talking a little Longhorn football. Hopefully, Texas will be 9-1, and after that, after the game tomorrow.
Okay. Well, by the way, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. We appreciate all y'all's support as we march on. It's hard to believe how many subscribers we have, but we couldn't do it without you guys and gals. And also, don't forget to head on over to ontexasfootball.com. Use promo code OTFOG. You'll get a full year for just $39.95. Jerry, Bobby, CJ, all bringing the goods over there. Great community, great discussion always going on. So please come join in on the fun. Again, ontexasfootball.com using promo code OTFOG, and you'll lock in that price, $39.95 for a full year. Well, we will be back same time, same place tomorrow. On Monday. I can't believe it's already Friday, but on Monday. And then the guys have you covered the rest of the day and throughout the weekend. So for Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton, I'm Blake Monroe, and we'll see you then.
Hook up.
Have a great weekend.